Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
The thing about silence is that it doesn't always come in peace. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a quiet Tuesday evening, slipping through the cracks in the kitchen window, creeping up behind you while you're setting the table with care. That night, I had poured myself into the meal. Not because I was trying to impress him. Not because I thought it would fix anything. But because I was holding onto a sliver of something. Maybe dignity, maybe denial, maybe just habit. I had spent an hour boiling pasta, another 20 minutes, making the garlic bread from scratch because he once said the frozen kind made him feel like we were poor. And the damn salad, was in the glass bowl we got for our 10th anniversary, even though I knew he wouldn't touch it. He never touched it. I lit a candle, not for romance, but to mask the smell of the garbage disposal that he promised to fix 2 weeks ago and never looked at again. I even put on a little mascara, which now sounds so pathetic it makes me want to slap my past self across the face. He came in like a gust of wind, fast, cold, already halfway back out. Tossed his keys on the counter without looking up, still tapping on his phone, mumbling something about traffic or Tim from accounting or whatever the hell excuse he was dragging in with him that night. I told him dinner was ready. He didn't respond. Just sat down. No kiss, no thanks, no eye contact, just a grunt as he stabbed the fork into the pasta like it had offended him. I watched him chew. 2 bites. 3 maybe. Then he put the fork down, leaned back in his chair, and let the words slide out of his mouth like spit. This is why I eat out. That was it. No build-up. No argument. Just 6 words that sliced through the steam still rising from the baked ziti like a goddamn guillotine. He didn't say it with rage. It was worse, it was boredom. Like I was a rerun on TV that he was tired of pretending to watch. I felt something in my chest tighten, not like heartbreak, more like a rubber band that had been stretched for years, finally snapping in two. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stood up, walked around the table, picked up his plate, still half full, the ziti perfectly cheesy, golden on top just how he used to like it, and scraped the whole thing into the trash. The salad followed. Then the bread. I didn't say a word. Didn't even look at him. Just moved with a kind of terrifying calm, like a nurse cleaning up after a deathbed. He blinked, like he was trying to figure out if I'd just overreacted or if I'd gone fully insane. But I didn't give him the satisfaction of explaining myself. I just rinsed the plate and set it gently on the drying rack like I'd done 1,000 times before. Then I sat down across from him and stared at the kitchen clock on the wall. It ticked so loud I thought it might crack the air between us. The room felt colder suddenly, like someone had opened a door to something I didn't yet see coming. He mumbled something about being tired. I didn't answer. He got up, left the room, and I stayed sitting at that table with my arms folded, trying to remember the last time he made me laugh. Trying to remember the last time I felt like his wife and not his unpaid maid. That was the last dinner I ever made for him. He didn't know it yet. But I did. And there was something powerful in that. Something final. Like placing the last puzzle piece and realizing the picture isn't what you thought it would be. I slept light that night. Not because I was angry, but because something deep inside me had shifted into place. A piece of the dam had cracked. People think heartbreak is loud. That it comes with shouting, broken glass, sobbing in the bathroom while love songs mock you from the radio. But that night, it came with paper plates, a cheap fork, and a husband who didn't care enough to lie anymore. And me quietly boiling over. It's strange how clearly you start to see things the moment you stop making excuses for them. I used to tell myself he was just tired, that stress at work made him distant, that maybe I was being too sensitive or needy or paranoid. I convinced myself that love didn't always look like flowers and back rubs and morning kisses, that real love was patient and practical and sometimes boring. But when I started watching, really watching, it all unraveled like a cheap sweater you shouldn't have put through the dryer. I didn't start looking for evidence. I just stopped ignoring it. His phone used to live face up on the coffee table, abandoned next to the remote while we watched reruns of shows we'd already seen too many times. Now it's always in his hand or his pocket or face down, and locked like it's guarding state secrets. He's glued to it even while brushing his teeth, like someone might text him the meaning of life any second. I once called his name 3 times from the next room, and he didn't hear a word because he was too busy grinning down at the screen. When I asked what was so funny, he just said, "Just a meme from Tim," like I was the babysitter and not his wife of almost 2 decades. Then there was the gym bag. Always in the trunk, freshly packed. Socks, shoes, protein bar, shaker bottle. He kept up the routine like clockwork, but something fell off. He'd come home with dry hair, no sweat on his shirt, and that soft, manufactured scent of someone who changed clothes but never broke a sweat. When I hugged him once, out of habit, not love, I caught a whiff of something that made my stomach twist. It wasn't mine. It was sweet, expensive, and clearly not from any aisle I've ever walked through at Target. Still, I didn't ask. I waited. And then came the worst kind of moment, not a big fight, not a door slammed or a lie caught red-handed, but a small, stupid slip of the tongue that stuck in my brain like gum under a diner table. He came in late, again, said he had to stay at the office to help prep for a budget meeting. That was the 3rd time this week. Which means, hold on, let me think here, that makes 6 times in 1 week. I'm no math genius, but even I know that doesn't add up. It was a dumb line, tossed out like garbage, but something about it lit a match in my gut. I waited for him to head to the shower, where he always spends exactly 17 minutes, and leaves the floor soaking wet like a crime scene. While the water ran, I went for his phone. No dice. Password changed. He used to let it sit unlocked. Now it was locked tighter than a teenage girl's diary. I checked his email on the family desktop. Nothing. Just the usual spam, coupons from stores we haven't visited since 2019, and emails from coworkers he's too polite to delete. He wasn't sloppy. He was careful. But no one's perfect forever. That's when I thought of the car. His keys were hanging by the back door, just like always. He never suspected me of anything because he didn't think I had it in me. He thought I was soft, safe, predictable, the perfect houseplant of a wife. But houseplants grow thorns when you forget to water them long enough. I slipped outside in my slippers, heart racing like I was 16 again, sneaking out past curfew. I opened the glove box first. Just napkins, sunglasses, old insurance papers. Then I checked the center console. More nothing. My hands were starting to shake. But when I leaned down to look under the passenger seat, that's when I found it. A crumpled receipt. Faded. Smudged with what looked like lipstick. I unfolded it slowly like a priest reading a confession. 2 glasses of wine. 1 creme brulee. A bottle of mineral water. And a room at the Grand Oak Motel, less than 10 minutes from my mother's house. The timestamp? Same night he said he was finishing reports at the office. My throat went dry. I held that paper like it might burst into flames in my hand. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't insecurity. This was proof. Proof that the man who once held my hair while I vomited through morning sickness was now holding hands with someone else over dessert. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in the driver's seat for a long time, staring at the garage door like it was a wall I'd just hit at 80 miles per hour. My fingers pressed into that receipt like it was his neck. He had no idea I knew. And I wasn't about to tell him. Not yet. I didn't throw the receipt at him like some soap opera heroine, didn't scream bloody murder or demand an explanation I already knew he'd lie through. I didn't blow up his phone or sob on the porch like a woman who'd just discovered heartbreak for the first time. Instead, I walked back into the house, folded that motel receipt as neatly as a love letter, and slid it into the back of my underwear drawer right next to the faded Polaroid from our honeymoon that I couldn't bring myself to throw out, even though it felt more like a photo of strangers than of us. Then I went out and bought the wine. The exact same bottle, Same brand, same year, same label with this stupid little crest that probably meant something to some French vineyard family who never imagined it'd be used as a prop in a midlife betrayal. I didn't buy it to drink. I bought it like you'd buy a weapon, not to use in haste, but to keep close, just in case the day came when you needed to do something final. It sat on the kitchen counter for 4 days, untouched, unopened, a silent guest that stared at me each morning as I poured my coffee and made him breakfast like nothing had changed. Except everything had. I didn't speak more than 5 words to him that week unless I absolutely had to. Dinner's on the stove. The dog needs walking. Your mother called again. No emotion, no fight, just a new kind of silence that had weight to it, thick and strange, like smoke in a locked room. I started sleeping in the guest bedroom under the excuse that I'd caught something at the store, some weak lie he didn't bother to question, probably glad he didn't have to fake concern or intimacy for another week. And while he carried on like nothing had shifted, I started studying him like a subject. I watched when he got up, how he always checked his phone before brushing his teeth, how he started shaving more often, how he started wearing cologne again, but only when he said he was going to run errands. I logged it all in my head like some bitter accountant keeping score, and with every little clue, something inside me kept getting quieter, colder, less inclined to give a damn. I didn't want him back. That was the strangest part. I didn't want to confront him, to make him grovel, to scream or cry or beg. I didn't even want to fix it. I wanted distance. I wanted silence, not peace, but the kind that comes after a storm when the air still smells like lightning and nobody trusts the quiet. Because that's what he'd become, the calm after his own destruction. But I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. I started checking his car more regularly, with the kind of discipline you'd expect from a private investigator or a woman on the brink. More receipts. More motels. Same wine. Same food. The names on the receipts weren't printed, but the pattern was. There was one from a place just a few blocks from the high school his niece went to, another 1-2 towns over, somewhere we'd once taken a weekend trip, long before we stopped touching each other with any intention. I even found one from Valentine's Day last year, when he told me he had the flu and spent the evening locked in the guest room watching movies. Turns out, he wasn't watching anything but someone else's body in a motel with a broken vending machine and cheap towels. And then I found them. My earrings. They weren't expensive, just little gold hoops he gave me for our 5th anniversary. I'd lost them over a year ago and assumed they slipped behind the dresser or got knocked into a floor vent during one of my obsessive cleaning sprees. But there they were in the glove box. Tucked into the corner, next to an old fast food receipt and a breath mint that had melted into the plastic lining. I stared at them for a full minute before reaching out to touch them, almost afraid they'd vanish like a ghost. I picked them up, turned them in my fingers, and laughed, not a happy laugh, not a sad one either. It was the kind of laugh that comes out when reality is so absurd, so cruelly ironic, that the only thing left to do is laugh before the anger eats a hole through your stomach. I didn't put the earrings back in the box. I didn't tell him I found them. I just slipped them on and wore them to dinner that night like a silent dare, waiting for him to notice. He didn't. Of course he didn't. Because in his mind, I was still the same woman who made his lunch without asking for anything in return, who cleaned the bathroom and folded his socks and waited up when he worked late. But I wasn't her anymore. And that's when I realized I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing a eulogy. It had hung there for years, always on the same hook by the front door, his precious black leather jacket soft like butter, worn in all the right places, polished and loved in a way I hadn't been in years. It was the kind of jacket you didn't just wear, you claimed it, like a second skin, like armor against the world. He took it to the cleaners more often than he took me out to dinner. He had a special brush just for it. I once watched him buff out a water stain on the sleeve with the kind of focus he hadn't given me since Bush was in office. There was no doubt about it, that jacket was his most consistent relationship. And I waited. I waited like a spider waits in a corner, patient, quiet, still enough not to give anything away, but ready the second the web trembles. I waited for the perfect moment, the right storm, and not just metaphorically, I mean a real goddamn thunderstorm. The kind of night where the air feels electric and every raindrop carries weight. When the forecast finally said rain and wind, I made sure to smile at him as he left the house with his usual lie half formed on his lips. "Don't wait up," he said, phone already glowing in his hand, color already turned like he was in a noir film. I told him, of course not, and meant it. The jacket was on its hook. Waiting. Faithful, stupid thing. I took the bottle, the wine from the receipt, the one with the name I'd memorized without ever tasting a drop. I unscrewed the cap slowly, the sound of it cracking open echoing through the hallway like a trigger being pulled. I stepped outside onto the porch, the wind already stirring, that first scent of rain mixing with the smell of dry earth and rotting leaves. Everything was quiet, except for the low, distant growl of thunder like something hungry rolling toward me on its belly. I didn't rush. I laid the jacket gently across the porch railing, like a priest preparing a body for burial. The sleeves dangled a little, limp and pathetic, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for it, not because of what I was about to do, but because it had once been part of something he loved. But the pity passed. I held the bottle up high, took a breath, and poured. The wine hit the leather with a dark, wet slap, soaking in immediately like the jacket was thirsty for it. It bled red into every crease, dripping down the sleeves and onto the wooden rail, splattering against the steps below like a crime scene that no one would report. It looked obscene, like blood on silk, and something about that, the ugliness of it, the mess, felt more honest than anything he'd said to me in the past 5 years. I emptied the bottle slowly, making sure it reached every inch of that soft black leather. Then I took the note I'd typed, not handwritten, because handwritten might feel too emotional, and I wasn't giving him that, and slipped it into the inside pocket. It was barely longer than a sentence, but it said everything I needed it to. Now we're both stained with something we can't wash out. I didn't slam the door when I went back inside. I didn't even look back to see the rain hit. I let the storm take it, let the water pound down and smear the wine deeper into the fibers, let the jacket soak and sag and wrinkle under nature's slow, relentless pressure. I took off my shoes, turned off the porch light, and went upstairs. I slept like a baby. I didn't dream, I didn't toss, and when the alarm buzzed at 6:30 sharp the next morning, I got up and made coffee like nothing had happened. I didn't ask if he got home late. I didn't ask why he didn't come to bed. I didn't even ask if he'd seen the weather report. I just handed him his usual travel mug and kissed his cheek like I hadn't just baptized his favorite possession in spite and red wine. He didn't mention the jacket. But I saw the look in his eyes when he walked out onto the porch, not a look of panic, not anger even. It was the look of a man who realized, a second too late, that someone had gotten to him where it actually hurt. That something he valued had been taken, and he couldn't replace it. He stood there a long time, staring at it, then picked it up like he was holding a broken wing. He never asked what happened. And I never offered to tell. Because some things once soaked through aren't meant to be washed clean. There's a specific kind of quiet that settles into a house when the war is over but no one wants to admit they lost. That's what it felt like, not peace, not even a truce, but an unspoken agreement to exist side by side like strangers waiting at the same bus stop, pretending they aren't aware of the tension thick enough to choke on. After the jacket incident, after the storm had come and gone and the leather hung limp and ruined like a drowned thing, Daniel didn't say a word. He didn't accuse, didn't ask, didn't even bring it up. But he changed. He started talking more, which was ironic, considering how much I'd begged for conversation back when it might have meant something. He left compliments on the counter like forgotten receipts, half-hearted and clumsy, things like, "You look nice today," or "Thanks for the coffee," even though I hadn't made him any. He lingered longer in the kitchen, pretending to look for cereal while sneaking glances like I was suddenly made of glass, and he was checking for cracks. He offered to take me to dinner sometime, which I'm sure he thought sounded spontaneous, but just reeked of guilt covered in cheap cologne. I didn't respond. I didn't nod. I didn't roll my eyes. I gave him nothing. Because at that point, I had already left the building, at least in every way that mattered. My body was still there, brushing my teeth next to him in the mirror, folding laundry with him in the next room, sitting across the table and passing him the salt. But my mind was somewhere else entirely, somewhere quiet and free of bullshit, where I didn't have to weigh every word and brace for every sigh. He thought I was being passive-aggressive. He thought I was punishing him. He didn't understand that I had already buried the body. The thing is, closure doesn't always come in fire and fury. Sometimes it shows up in stillness, in the calm acceptance that nothing's going to be fixed because it was never built right in the first place. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the way he probably expected. I wasn't imagining revenge or playing some dramatic mental chess game. I was done. I was sitting in the ruins of what we'd built, and I wasn't looking for the exit. I was waiting for the moment I could walk out without looking back. That moment came a week later, over microwave pizza, which felt both ridiculous and somehow poetic. He'd made it, a frozen pepperoni monstrosity he used to love in our 20s, before cholesterol and disappointment replaced our appetite for grease and salt. He set it on the table like it was an olive branch, cut into even slices, paper plates at the ready like we were hosting some awkward middle school sleepover. We sat across from each other, chewing in silence. I watched his mouth move, the way his jaw clenched between bites, how he wiped his fingers on a napkin he'd folded into a perfect square. And then he cleared his throat, the universal male signal that something important is about to be said, but probably won't be said well. I know I haven't been. I know I could have done things differently, he said, not meeting my eyes. Maybe we could, start fresh? And I smiled. Not because it was sweet, not because it was hopeful, but because it was pathetic in a way that finally made sense. He wasn't offering to rebuild. He was offering to repaint the walls of a house already half-burned to the ground. I set my slice down slowly and looked him in the face for the first time in what felt like months. You eat out because you never learned to come home, Daniel, I said, my voice as calm as if I were reciting a recipe. I just cleared the table for good. He blinked, and I saw the confusion try to rise up before it was crushed by realization. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an opening to argue. It was a closing statement. The end of the book, not the chapter. He tried to say something, but the words stayed lodged in his throat, and I wasn't about to help him cough them up. I left the house 1 week later. No packed suitcases by the door, no crying in the driveway, no dramatic final scene for the neighbors to watch through their curtains. Just a quiet Tuesday morning, a note on the fridge that read, "Don't forget the dog's meds," and a manila envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside it was a short letter, not a list of grievances, not a blow-by-blow of his failures, just a simple explanation. I was always here, Daniel. You just never showed up. And beneath that, I'd slipped in the dry cleaning bill for the jacket, not because I expected him to pay it, but because I wanted him to remember that even the things he thought he could control weren't safe anymore. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I didn't take the wedding photos or the china or the anniversary card he gave me 10 years ago that said "Forever" in big, loopy letters. What I took with me was mine, my time, my silence, my damn sanity. Because closure doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like red wine in the rain. He kept the house exactly the same for months, or at least that's what my sister told me when she drove past it on her way to the dentist and saw the porch light still flickering the same way it always had, like a heartbeat in the dark. Daniel never changed the curtains, never moved the furniture. It's funny how men cling to the shell of something after they've already hollowed it out. Like if they leave the lights on long enough, the past might come home and sit down again. What he didn't know, and what he never would, is that I left more than just a dry cleaning bill and a goodbye note behind. I left reminders. Traps, maybe? Or breadcrumbs, depending on how poetic you want to get. I didn't do it out of spite, or not only out of spite. I did it because I knew the truth. You can't hurt a man who never sees what's coming, but you can haunt him. In the upstairs linen closet, behind a stack of Guess towels we never used except for show, I left a second bottle of that wine, the same kind from the motel receipt, the same vintage I'd poured across his favorite jacket while the thunder rolled overhead. I left it unopened, upright, placed carefully beside a folded dishcloth embroidered with the word home in cursive. I don't know if he ever found it. I don't know if he stood there one Sunday morning, looking for extra pillowcases, and saw it sitting there like a time bomb, like a memory too intact to ignore. There were other things, too, small things that might seem meaningless to someone who hadn't been paying attention. I tucked one of the motel receipts inside the pages of his college yearbook, wedged between a photo of him on the track team and a handwritten note from a girl who clearly thought the sun rose and set on his stupid grin. I changed the password on the Netflix account to TryHarder22 and waited to see how long it would take him to notice. I heard, through mutual acquaintances and the slow leak of small-town gossip, that he started dating again. A woman from work, younger, blonde, the kind who posts her lunch on Instagram and thinks a relationship can be fixed with brunch and matching sweaters. Apparently, she's nice, which I'm sure means she hasn't figured him out yet. She probably thinks he's charming. Probably laughs at his stories, even the ones he stole from movies. I give it time. But here's the part one never told anyone, not even my sister, who begged me to move on and find someone better, whatever the hell that means when your idea of love has been filtered through 20 years of quiet disappointment. Before I left, the night before actually, I stood in our bedroom for a long time, holding a photo of us from our early days, me in a sundress, him with his arms slung around my shoulders like I was something he'd earned. We were smiling wide and easy, like people who had no idea what kind of life they were signing up for. And I thought not about revenge, not about justice, but about how many chances I'd given. How many dinners I made. How many lies I swallowed like aspirin, hoping the headache would pass. How many times I told myself that marriage was supposed to be hard, as if that made the ache less sharp. He never looked at me the way he looked at that jacket. And that truth, small and mean as it was, told me everything I needed to know. I've never gone back. Not once. Not even to drive past. Because I don't need to see it to know what's still there. The echoes of someone who thought he had time. The ruins of a house where love once lived and now only memory keeps the lights on. And sometimes I wonder if he ever really figured it out, not just the wine, not just the note in the pocket, but the whole thing. The years. The silence. The way I pulled away inch by inch until there was nothing left for him to hold. Or if he still walks around thinking I overreacted to a few bad months, that I just woke up one day and decided I was done like it was some impulsive thing. Because men like him don't lose women in their minds, we leave them. But what he'll never understand, not truly, not deep in his bones, is that I didn't leave. I disappeared. Long before the storm. Long before the wine. Long before the plate hit the trash. And closure? Closure was never for him. It was always for me.